One of the most noticeable differences between Western and Eastern saddles is the presence of the horn. In the open ranges of the West, the saddle horn played a crucial role during cattle roundups. It was used for roping and handling livestock. Back east, where the terrain was heavily forested, herding cattle was mostly done on foot, making horses and ropes less essential. The Western saddle has a considerably longer history than the American frontier. Its design can be traced to around 700 AD, when the Moors developed saddles suited for battle. These featured high cantles and pommels for protection, and long stirrups that allowed mounted warriors to ride in armor. The Spanish later adopted and modified this design, turning it into what became known as the Spanish war saddle. They introduced it to the Americas during their conquest of Mexico in the early 16th century. Over time, the saddle was adapted for ranch work and became a vital tool for the vaqueros, Mexico's original cowboys. As Spanish influence spread northward into what is now the southwestern United States, the saddle's design split into two major regional styles, the Californio and the Tejano, each shaped by the needs and traditions of their respective regions. Cattle once wandered freely across the open ranges of the American West, and in this dry, short grass country, a cowboy couldn't get far without a good horse and a trusty rope. In fact, a cowboy's true worth wasn't judged by how fast he could draw a six-shooter, or even how well he could ride. It was his skill with a rope that truly set him apart. Much of the ranching way of life, including rodeo events, riding techniques, roping styles, and even the vocabulary, can be traced back to the Mexican vaquero tradition. When American settlers began arriving in Texas during the 1820s, they adopted large, rugged, square-skirted saddles with double rigging, perfect for the thick brush country they found themselves in. The Mexican vaquero practiced a roping method called dar la vuelta, where a loop was thrown, and just before the rope went taut, a turn was taken around the saddle horn. Over time, this became known as dally roping in American slang. Meanwhile, Texans developed their own method called hard and fast, where the rope was tied off directly to the horn. Each approach had its own pros and cons, depending on the terrain, the cattle, and the cowboy doing the roping. Plenty of cowboys lost a finger or even a thumb while taking a dally around the saddle horn. That's the moment when, after roping the head or heels of a steer, they quickly wrap the rope around the horn. The trick is to keep your hand clear. Get caught in the loop, and it could cost you dearly. And more than a few cowboys saw their rope, and sometimes even their saddle, go flying when a steer bolted and dragged everything behind it in a cloud of dust. In the Pacific Northwest and California, the buckaroos and Californios wore lighter-built centerfire saddles. Unlike the thick brush country of Texas, where saddles took a beating, these Western riders could afford to decorate theirs with silver conchos and fine leather tooling. Over time, styles began to blend, just like the crowns on cowboy hats. There was a time you could tell where a cowboy hailed from: Montana, Texas, Idaho, or California, just by looking at his saddle rigging or the shape of his hat. The mochila was the Pony Express rider's lifeline, a specially designed leather mail pouch that fit snugly over his saddle and could be grabbed and transferred to a new mount faster than you could blink. It served as the essential mail pouch used by Pony Express riders. At each relay station along their route across the American West, riders made fast swaps to fresh horses, usually in just a few minutes. The mochila was quickly lifted off the tired horse and thrown onto the saddle of a waiting mount, allowing the mail to keep moving with minimal delay. The McClellan saddle was officially adopted by the U.S. Cavalry in 1859. It was developed by George B. McClellan, who would later become a general, after he toured Europe studying different cavalry equipment. His design was inspired by the Mexican tree saddle, widely used in the American Southwest, and a Hungarian-style saddle worn by the Prussian cavalry. In the early stages of the Civil War, Confederate cavalry units used a similar design known as the Walter Jennifer saddle. However, as the war dragged on and their horses began to lose weight, the Jennifer saddle started causing injuries to the animal's bony withers. Due to its improved fit and reduced weight, many Confederate soldiers eventually shifted to the McClellan saddle. When the smoke settled after the U.S.-Mexican War in 1848, America gained more than land. It stepped into a frontier shaped by generations of vaqueros and their way of life. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo handed over a massive chunk of Mexican land to the United States, stretching across what would become Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, California, and Colorado. But along with those 1.2 million square miles came 80,000 Hispanic residents who possessed knowledge that would transform the American frontier forever. These former Mexican citizens didn't just fade into history, they became the teachers of the Wild West. The skilled horsemen known as vaqueros had been perfecting their craft for generations, mastering techniques that Anglo settlers could barely imagine. When American ranchers arrived in their newly acquired territories, they quickly discovered that survival depended on learning from these experts. The iconic image of the American cowboy, complete with wide-brimmed hat, leather chaps, jingling spurs, sturdy boots, and coiled lasso, wasn't born in Texas saloons. Every single piece of that legendary outfit originated in the workshops and ranches of Mexican vaqueros. These weren't just fashion choices. They were survival tools refined through decades of hard experience under the blazing southwestern sun. American cowboys proved to be quick students, but they weren't content to simply copy their Mexican mentors. As they learned the fundamentals, they began modifying equipment to match their own needs and the unique challenges of American ranching. The results would define an entire era. The Mother Hubbard saddle shows exactly how these two cultures blended together. During the 1860s, American craftsmen took the elaborate, heavy saddles favored by California vaqueros and reimagined them completely. The result was a streamlined, lightweight design that could handle the punishing demands of long cattle drives and navigate through thick brush country that would snag the ornate Mexican saddles. The Mother Hubbard saddle was rugged and no-nonsense for the hard-riding cowboy, but vaquero saddles were dazzling with silver and exquisite leather carvings, true works of art. American cowboys needed gear that could survive months on the trail, not impress spectators at fiestas. This practical approach would become the hallmark of American frontier innovation, taking proven techniques and adapting them for the harsh realities of Western expansion. The Collins saddle was another important development in the history of Western riding gear. Introduced in the late 1800s by Peter F. Collins, a saddle maker based in Texas, these saddles were designed specifically for the rugged demands of working cowboys on the open range. Built with sturdy leather and reinforced with steel hardware, Collins saddles offered durability and comfort for long days in the saddle. One key feature was the deep seat and high cantle, which gave riders better stability when working cattle or riding rough terrain. The horn was large and strong, perfect for roping steers during roundup season. Unlike some earlier styles, Collins saddles balance function with a clean, simple design, avoiding excessive decoration. This made them popular among cowboys who needed reliable gear that could take a beating. By the early 1900s, the Collins saddle was well established as a favorite for many Western riders, carrying on the tradition of practical, work-ready saddles in the American West. As the frontier era reached its peak in the late 1800s, the Wade saddle emerged as the cowboy's most trusted companion. It's named after Bill Wade, a master saddle maker from Texas, who crafted gear built tough for the rugged cowboy life. Wade designed this saddle specifically for cowboys who needed a durable, comfortable saddle for tough working conditions out on the range. Its deep, rounded seat provided excellent security, helping riders stay put during fast cattle drives or rough rides. The high cantle and strong pommel offered great support, while the horn was built solid enough for roping work. Unlike the more decorative Californian saddles, the Wade saddle focused on practical use, with a simple, rugged design. It became especially popular across the Great Plains and Rocky Mountain regions, where cowboys faced rugged terrain and long days in the saddle. Even today, the Wade saddle is admired for its blend of comfort, strength, and timeless Western style.